Hello and welcome to the Service Ducks podcast. I am co-host James Downs.
And I'm Rush here. And we're here to chat about all things ServiceNow, everyday life as a ServiceNow consultant, new features, implementation successes, and perhaps more entertaining when it doesn't go quite so well.
Hello and welcome back to the Service Ducks podcast. Russ, what have you been up to this week?
Well, let me have a think. So there's a couple of things I was going to mention, actually. So first of all, I was back in London. Every time we do one of these,
You're always in London.
It seems like I'm in London. I'm not in London a lot. And it seems like we haven't spoken for quite a while, actually. It seems like a while since we've done this. But yeah, so I was in London again. And the exciting thing for me, it was nice to get out, see customers, see clients, and have workshops face to face. But what was nicer, let me tell you, I found the Brewdog bar in Waterloo. In Waterloo train station, just underneath, there's a Brewdog bar. I'm a big fan of IPAs and stuff, so I found that. Had myself a sneaky little pint before I got on the train.
Very nice.
And let me tell you, the place is massive. It's humongous. It's got an ice cream van inside. It's got a slide.
An ice cream van inside. What?
There's an ice cream van inside. Actually, I was going to tell you something. So there's an ice cream van inside. There's a slide. So if you kind of get a little bit tipsy, you can slide
Brilliant.
down.
Yep. Make it worse.
You got ping pong tables. There's a bowling alley.
Oh, nice.
If you got bored of beer, you can just have coffee. You know, they cater for all.
Very nice.
But interestingly, right, they also have meeting spaces. But get this. This is what we're going to do this year, my friend. They have specific podcast spaces.
Oh, hello.
So I'm thinking in the summer, we should get ourselves down there, have a few beers, and do a podcast.
This sounds ideal.
From Brewdog in Waterloo.
A bit of sliding, a bit of ping pong.
I think we should. I think we'll probably need some high-level sponsorship though before we can do that, because it's going to be quite.
That might come. We could do dual. You could podcast while you're doing ping pong. That might come across okay.
That's very true. Actually, we don't need to hire out the specific podcast bit, do we? Could just do it in there. Probably get kicked out. But anyway, so that was really exciting.
Yeah.
And the other thing, so work related, because that's what people are here to listen to about ServiceNow, I guess. I've been mucking about with predictive intelligence. And when I say mucking about, I mean, yes, I've had a project to do, but I've been mucking about with it. And it's not something I've really messed around with too much since it was first conceived many versions ago.
Did you have enough records to go on to train it?
Oh, God, yeah. We got like 200, 300,000, so we got enough.
Okay, yeah.
But what gets me, so I was trying to do, so I've done a bit of, for those who don't know, there's different kind of arms of predictive intelligence, like classification, similarity, and clustering. Right, so I've done a bit of clustering, which is all about spotting opportunities for automation. Okay, that's done, great. So we can now see a visual, but it's kind of how do you present that to the business to say, these are the opportunities, let's go and do something with. So that's the next step. But the classification thing is all about take an incident, right? Based on the fields in this incident, what's the output field? So that might be an incident comes in, it gets categorized in a certain way, therefore we know the assignment group is this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is fantastic. But I think a lot of companies are more advanced than that now. And it's not just about I want to reassign, because that's like an assignment rule, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not just I want to reassign to this group. It's based on this. I want to then create these other records that need to go here, there. So, do you see what I mean?
Exactly,
so there's another process behind it, and I think that's more your process automation. From what I can tell, process automation, the process automation workbench, I think it's heading more towards that. So I've been mucking around with predictive intelligence.
Yeah.
Am I impressed?
It's such an underused feature, I think, isn't it? I know it's been there a little while now, and to be quite honest, I've not known many ServiceNow customers who are at that point, in a maturity point, where they could start investigating its use and how they can, start to really using intelligence. I think a few have tried it and had some questionable results, and does it really give you the kind of value to warrant using it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Does it give you the value? And I think there's not enough material out there to kind of help you go through that. Look, you've done the techie nerdy bit. Now what's the business case that you can put forward through? And I think that's part of the challenge. But I also think there's this process automation, which I need to wrap my head around a bit more. I think I did see it at one of the knowledge events, and I don't know, it was while I had a donut or something, so I wasn't paying too much attention. So if you've used predictive intelligence and you're listening to this and you've got views on it, either positive or negative, then drop us an email and we'll read them out.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. So that was me for last week. What about you? What have you been doing? I can see, so we do this on video, and we're going to probably start videoing these, but I can see you have a new addition to your windowsill there.
I do have a new addition. I've expanded my my mascot range, other than Mag the Mighty here, which is from Game of Thrones.
Mag the Mighty?
Yeah.
I don't think I know that one.
Do you know? That's the really big guy from Beyond the Wall. Jesus, it's been ages since Game of Thrones now. It's been...
Is that why he's called Mighty? Because he's big?
I guess so. Yeah, well, he's mighty fierce. Yeah. But no, my new addition...
Can't be called Keith the Placid.
You come up with all sorts, couldn't you? No, but my new addition is my new little ducky. I call him Dave. He has
Dave the Duck.
He's got a nice kind of like ensemble in terms of like he's got a mask on and he's got a nice little headdress thing and some. He
looks good.
He's different. He's a different kind of duck.
He is, and he's bigger than mine. Oh Christ! I just thought how that sounded. But the duck I have, we both have ducks in our background. Mine's very small.
Yeah,
my duck.
It's about how you use
it, which is not a euphemism. This has taken a turn for the worse, isn't it?
This one's rated R. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, no, it's my duck. Yeah, it's my guy. It's my guy. But no, in terms of what I've been up to as well in the last week or so, my daughter is learning about the Titanic at the moment at school.
Yes.
And one of her tasks, well, which I've deemed now my task, was to build the Titanic in Lego. So they've asked her to almost create a boat and, test it out on some kind of like, a bit of water to see if it will float and sink and come up with, reasons why it's floating or sinking. So I bought this £40 Lego set to rebuild Titanic.
Was it a Titanic set?
Yeah,
specific
Titanic set. Yeah, it was roughly 3 foot wide, I'd say.
For 40 quid?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it was not. Yeah, it was decent, to be honest with you. But it sank within a couple of minutes. The windows were too low, and things started to break off it immediately. And the 3 or 4 hours it took to put it together was not entirely worth it.
Anyone would say that's quite a good experiment, then, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to sink. Isn't that the whole point?
Exactly. Yeah. It was factual. It did its job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it demonstrated. This is what happened. But no, it's good though, isn't it?
It's good.
I think I get too invested in, specifically when it comes to science and history with my daughter's homework.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I get too invested. It's no longer your homework.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why your teachers are wrong about this.
Yeah. Proving them wrong. Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, it's all good. So busy week for you then.
Yeah, busy week. Yeah, fun week. Yeah, all good.
Busy week. Should we
let's crack on to the actual topic
ServiceNow for a little bit?
I think so. Yeah. Let's move on from Lego and questionable duck-related humour.
and Barry the Bold. Right. So this, I thought what we'd do, and this again has been quite topical in the last few weeks, and it always comes up every now and then, is around what is best practice / what is your mode of transport to get, stay with me, to get configuration through the development stack. So you've got, let's assume you've got your dev, test, and prod environment, and you're doing some configuration in your dev environment. How do you move it through the environments physically? We all know we've got update sets. You've got things like XMLs. We've got Git repositories if you're using like scope taps and whatever. Or interestingly, you can do it for global apps now. But how do you do that? And then how do you coordinate that with teams of people that are doing that, perhaps working across the same kind of products or different products? And so let's start with that. Go.
Well, I think the first thing that you one of the things that you mentioned there around teams is quite important, because sometimes, obviously, it depends who's listening to this. If you are, a developer for a organization, if you're a developer for a partner, and you could be involved with multiple different teams, it really depends on, how many people are involved at one time. Is there multiple dev instances as well? That's another consideration to think about. There could be multiple.
That's a good point, right? So let's tackle that in a bit. Let's just assume you've only got one. Let's keep it simple, otherwise we'll be here for a long time.
That
is a good point, though.
You're a sole developer on a platform working on something on X.
Okay.
Yeah. So my first instinct with that is obviously you want to keep things controlled, moving things through the instances. You may have teams looking to, QA or, UAT your work that you're doing in a separate instance. So you need to start thinking, how am I going to track what I am doing when I move my configuration up to the next stack?
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
So for me, personally, I like to write things down. I like to keep a separate logbook, or I call it a run book, where I can just store just in a spreadsheet, nothing too fancy. And I'm sure there's other clever methods of doing this, maybe even within ServiceNow as well, in pipeline and deployment management, for instance. But I like just a simple spreadsheet where I can just write down, these are the XMLs, these are the update sets, this is the order that I'm intending on applying them to.
Okay, so you're old school.
Old school, I quite like it. It's controlled, and it even works if there was multiple developers, so you can really understand the correct order that things are going to be applied as well.
So that's for you. So if you're working alongside someone in a team, do you get them to also do the same thing?
Yep, to update exactly the same document, so you know what's being, what order things are being completed in, and what order the things will be applied. Because I know we're going to come up to this very soon, I'm sure, about the argument of merge versus batch.
Oh, we will. But that's interesting that you'd say, if you're working with other people, get them to do the same thing. I think that's a key point, right?
Yeah.
And I've had this argument with, I won't name any names, but I've had this argument around either, and we'll come on to this as well, pulling update sets from one instance to another using sources, or exporting the XML and loading the XML.
Yep.
And from what you just said, and I agree, I think as long as you're all doing the same thing and it's documented and it's agreed, it's a lot easier than if you're noting everything down on a spreadsheet, someone else is doing it on a fag packet, someone else just isn't bothering, it's in their head.
Yeah.
I think if everyone's consistent, that's for me, that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. So, consistency is absolutely key. And especially if you're brand new to could be a project or to a particular organization, you do want to ask about those set principles and guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Ask if those things are there and in place. Most likely you'll just see blank faces, by the way.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But it's important to set something down on paper to say this is the way that we're doing it.
So just winding it back to its simplistic terms. Yep. So one of the ways you can move stuff is via update sets, right?
Yep.
So we've mentioned that. Do you have a standard? Do you have a policy around update sets and update set management? So what I mean by that is, do you say, right, I want a standard naming convention? Do you have a a policy that says each update set must have something in the description? Do you say that update sets are attributed to stories or epics or I don't know, some other weird word that I can't think of? But you get the idea.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And to answer that, I think you've essentially answered it for me, because typically, yes.
I didn't want to do that.
I know you've preempted it, which is pretty good. We can move on. No. Absolutely. I would absolutely include the likes of the story numbers within the short description or the naming of the update set. For some reason, I don't know if it's just a habit thing, I always put my initials in the update set name as well.
Yep.
I know that once you move them, it's going to say, it's from James or that sort of thing, but it's always good to see that your name in there, because you could be exporting these files. You could be viewing it in a spreadsheet. It's handy to have in there.
So I'm going to counter that and say, well, I'm not going to counter it. I'm going to completely agree. I don't know why I said that. But I'm just going to agree it's good to put your initials in the name, because if you did it and then I pulled your update set to the next instance, and my credentials were used in that update source, it would be like I created the update set. So it's not always obvious that James created it.
Yeah.
So I would agree. Initials in the short description, or the name of it is a good way to go.
Another consideration would be: do you create an I guess this is my question to you. Do you create an update set per story? I know a few are against this. I've come across lots of architects where say, it's just a waste, you can have so many update sets, and you're going to have them per scope as well.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to be bold. I'll be bold. Yes. That's it.
Yes. And what's the benefit? What is the benefit of having one update set per story?
I come from an agile background, right?
Yeah.
And if we think about what a story is something that can be deployed independently. By and large, it's something that we should be able to deploy on its own to deliver value to the business as quick as possible. That's the whole point in agile, right? Is get stuff out quick.
Yeah.
So the way when stories are written, they should be written in such a way that you could deploy individually. Now, we know that's not the case when you've got things like integrations. What's the point in deploying one without the other? I get that.
Yep.
But if I use that as my base, then I'm going to create an update set per story.
Yeah.
That's why I would do that. There are obviously edge cases, and it's fine to have a discussion about it. But I think if you have that starting point, that's a good place to be.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen examples where people will create update sets almost per process sort of thing. So you'd see like an update set like, this is all the work that we're doing for incident management. I guess that's more waterfall style, isn't it, really? And it depends. It also depends on your testing cycle and how that's going to work in terms of, like you say, pushing it up to test to be.
It is waterfall, but then let me ask you this, right? So if you had an update set per process and you're doing an incident implementation, you have one update set, right?
Yeah.
This would never happen. Come on. Who would do this? So you have one update set that contains all your updates. You can have thousands of rows in there. Thousands.
Yeah, I mean, you could decide to say, right, this is my update set for incident management 1. Push that up, then incident management 2.
So here's a leading question. So if, and we've focused mainly on update sets, haven't we? So let's just go with it. Let's just make it all about update sets. Other methods are available.
It's a big part of it, isn't it?
It is. Yep. So let's take your argument there. Say if you've seen people that that contain everything in it, like a product or a process update set, is there a better way of doing that? That's a leading question.
Is there a better?
You're looking blank.
Yeah. Is there a better way of having? Other than having. Yeah, I don't understand what you're leading to.
Right. I see you were looking up there. He's not going to help you.
Where's the answers?
The sellotape to your ceiling. No, what I was getting at is if you carry on and have update sets per story, there's nothing to stop you batching those using the batching facility up into a product batch.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's when we start talking about batching
a product
versus
batch or
merging
like
and
a
all that.
Sprint batch or something like that, typically. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can deploy stories individually, but you can kind of group those update sets of stories against an epic, a feature, whatever you want to call it, product, process, and then deploy the batch, which then deploys all your update sets which are attributed to the stories.
Yeah. I mean, I'd argue...
It sounds perfect, doesn't it? It sounds really good.
Yeah.
In theory.
I'd argue that the merging or batching is purely there as an ease of way to push your config up between the instances.
Yep.
As opposed to a feature or tool to help where you're storing your information in update sets, if you get what I mean.
Okay.
But yeah, because you could also do it the same way. You could say you could have an update set for incident management, change, problem, and then you put that into a batch for the entirety of all of those into...
That'd be interesting.
Then pushing that up. Yeah. But yeah, it's horses for courses, and like you say, as long as you kind of set these things up front about how you're going to be doing this, and your whole team are understanding of that, I think that's what matters.
Here's a question for you. I've got two, actually. So are you on the merge camp, or are you on the batch camp, or are you on the don't do anything camp, or do you mix it up?
I'm on the batch camp. So before batch came along, because obviously it's not been there all the time. Merge was there, and it was the way to go. But there's something mysterious and black magic about merge. You almost kind of like put your trust and faith in it. It's like, we're gonna just merge these, put all these things together, and we're gonna trust it when it goes into the next instance. I don't like that.
So just explain very quickly what merging is.
Yeah, so merging allows multiple update sets to be combined essentially into one. And there is good things with that. You could be having multiple developers working on an instance developing, and you're not all in control of who's doing what, and you're touching the same script sometimes, and it's good to say, right, we're going to just keep on updating it, and then we're going to merge all of our config, and that's what we're going to push up. So it does help. It increases speed. There's probably better conflict resolution that way, because, like I say, you could be working on the same script and it'll just take up what's the latest. The downside to merging is the control element, right? Because you're pulling everything in and trusting this kind of process that whatever latest is correct.
You've got to get with the times. You've got to trust. You've got to trust the platform, James.
Oh, are you team merge?
No.
Oh,
no. Do you know what? I used to be a big, not a big fan of merge, but I saw the benefit with it. And I think I know when you and I were on a project, we used to merge our update sets. But I think we used to. Why was I comfortable with that? I was comfortable with that because I was comfortable. I was comfortable with you, right? And that sounds weird. Oh, that sounds really weird.
This episode's really gone south.
I was confident in your ability, and you have some of the same personality traits as me, is that you're very organized in what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So when we were merging, I understood what we were all working on. We used to speak all the time. There was that communication, that dialogue all the time.
True.
And if there's any kind of conflicts or questions around what we're merging, then we'd sort it out pretty quick.
Yeah.
So yes. So I was with merge. Batch. I haven't merged anything for a long, long time.
Yeah. Since batch come along, I'm the same.
Yeah. Favouring more on batching. But here's a massive question, right? This is if you're working on, so if you've got a team of developers and you're working on individual update sets, because we've already decided they're based on stories.
Yep.
Right. For the purpose of this argument.
Yep.
When do you batch? Do you batch in dev? Do you move stuff up to test and batch in test? Or do you do some in dev and then do the hierarchy in test? In fact, before we get onto that, let's just explain batching a little bit, right? So batching is where you can add, you've got a bunch of update sets, and you can add a parent update set to those that creates kind of a hierarchy. So consider, let's take incident as a product. You might have high level parent as being incident update set.
Yeah.
And that would be the parent of other update sets. Let's say you've got 2 levels or 2 tiers. So you might have incident routing and incident, I don't know, resolution as maybe your second tier down. And then within those update sets, you've got another layer of update sets that have those as the parents. So it's kind of like a pyramid, I guess. And it's absolutely worth making some considerations and an agreed policy of what those hierarchies are going to be, as in what are you going to have on the parent levels, what are you going to have at the second levels, how many levels deep do you want to go before you start creating another hierarchy. I would say anyone listening to this, absolutely consider that. There is no right or wrong answer, but consider it, spend some thought. And I think the key theme we keep coming back to, as long as it's consistent across everyone that's working on that project, it's going to make it a lot easier.
Absolutely. I think one of the added benefits that I can just add to these things is that with Batch also you can include the other scopes. So remember, if you're working on merges and things like that, you cannot merge cross scopes update sets.
Yeah.
So
that's very good.
Yeah. That's been incredibly handy.
It is, because how often do you work in things like incident and then you have to flick over to the I don't know, what's it called? Incident operational workspace space workspace scope. Do you know what I mean?
To answer your original question, definitely in dev. I think having that kind of organized in dev and together, and then moving that up together rather than changing it in test. I don't know if you have a different opinion on that, but I prefer to manage all those things in dev.
I think I agree. I guess it depends. There's a lot of variables, isn't there? It's like, where are you doing testing? Where are you doing UAT? Because some people only have developer and prod instance, right? So we're going to think about that. So some people don't even have a test.
Yeah, I think it's it's quite rare, but you're right. Yep, there is a few.
So I guess, again, it keeps coming back to it. I think you got to take each scenario as it comes, but as long as it's been considered, there's been a discussion, it's been agreed, and it's documented, I would, I'd say anything goes.
I think for me,
in the right way.
Yeah, if you're batching it up all kind of like ready in dev, and you're pushing that up to test, that's your first kind of check that it's going to go into a different environment as you'd expect. So when you're pushing this into prod, you know generally what you're going to expect by doing that. So if you're, if some kind of issue happens and, what you don't want to do is just kind of then start to change how the update sets look and feel in test, and then you're testing almost something completely different going into prod. So you're almost setting yourself up for a fall potentially. That
is a really good point, actually.
Unless you have a staging environment. Yep.
Yeah, you've made a good point, because we need to remember, perhaps a flippant comment by me there, but we need to remember that it's not just testing that the dev works in tests. Yeah. It's testing the deployment as well. So you're quite right, is deploy it as you would from dev into test, as you would from test into prod. Exactly. Because that's your kind of dry run, right?
Yeah, and going back to our very first point about having some kind of run book, you can then document all of those expected skipped updates, or which things to accept, which things to skip. All there ready, and you're going to get the same thing going into prod.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I just did a project the other week, actually, where it was kind of an ongoing piece of work, and we cloned over another environment purely to do a dry run of the deployment again. Yeah. So we'd already done it into test.
Yeah.
But it was belt and braces, let's do another one. And do you know what? That allowed us to refine the implementation plan, because that's another good thing, have an implementation plan.
100%. Yep.
It allowed us to refine that and spend time, because we're not all perfect. We're going to get errors. We're going to get collisions, and you need to document them and make the decisions, right? Yep. Do you accept the errors? Do you skip the errors? What do you do? Do you do a fix update set or whatever? But it allows us that kind of comfort blanket to do that, document it. So at least when we're deploying it to live, we know exactly what to expect.
Yeah.
And the other argument, and I always say this, right? Would you rather do a dry run that takes 2 hours in office time, that means your deployment outside of office time takes 30 minutes? Or would you rather not do that and spend 2 hours 30 minutes deploying it in your own time.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
If you want to think about it like that, go ahead.
And like you say, it comes down to instance management and how many instances you've got, whether you can get a temporary staging instance. There could be multiple teams pushing things up to test. So can you really do the additional clone back just for that purposes for your stuff? Lots of things to kind of consider. But yeah, it's worth its weight in gold if you can do that.
Oh, I think so.
Especially if it's a big release.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, absolutely. So, okay, we've spoken a bit about merging. We've spoken a bit about batching.
Yep.
We've talked quite a lot about update sets.
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts on how to move those update sets? So we've decided that we're going to do them per story and we can batch and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But how do you move them from environment to environment? Are you on team export the XML and import the XML, or are you on team pull it across using the update source?
So this is going to be very.
You've gone really thoughtful there. You got quite defensive.
All right,
I noticed.
My way only. This is going to be a similar story to like the merge v batch. I think up to a certain point, I don't know when, I kind of switched my ways, but up to a certain point, I was always export. I still like to export regardless of option, by the way, because it's good to have that kind of copy of your work. You know what happens sometimes when you accidental clone backs when you don't expect it, or something happens on the instance.
Yeah.
So it's always good and a good practice to export your update sets regardless.
Okay.
But I am on team pull up for the update sources. I find it
team pull up
easy to use. It's just so quick. I do like if you were to, for example, have an update set on dev, you pull it up to test. There's an error to do with skipped collisions where it can't update immediately. So I like to go back and say, okay, well, I'm going to delete that update set. Then from test, I'll go and fix it in dev first, so it's clean when it goes back up to
deleting.
test. Yeah. So I like to do that as well. Okay. Rather than additional update sets to fix what's previous. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So
team pull up.
What? What can we call the other team? I can't call it team export and import. Oh, we will. Okay. So I, like you, I was always on team export and import, and I think I know why I was that way, and it's probably the same as you, maybe. Years ago, I would always export and import, and that was because I had complete control of what I was moving. I knew, because I have a run book as well, right? I call it a run book. Let's not dress it up. It's a spreadsheet, right?
Yep.
So I had that as well, where I'd export, update set, log it in my spreadsheet, import into the next environment, and I would go through the process. It'd be like a process in my head, ticking the box to say it's now in the test environment.
Yep.
Right? And that was when I was working on a project with multiple different teams, multiple different partners. So I didn't want them to pull my stuff up before I was ready to do it.
Yeah. Good point. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I have now moved onto team, what do we call it? Pull up. So I have now team pull up.
Yep.
The things I would mention around that is when you go, so it's update set sources is the module, and you can pull it up from whichever environment you like, but make sure it's a sub-prod one.
Yeah.
And you can add in the credentials. The only thing I would say is make sure they're some kind of service account. It's not someone's individual account.
Yep. Good point.
And I guess you just have to know that when you complete an update set in dev and someone else pulls it up, it's going to pull your update set up.
Just don't mark it as complete if you're not ready for it to be pulled up.
And that's the point, right? So, and that's the point. If you're batching, as we've said that we're going to batch in dev, you've completed them. If you start completing them and think, well, I'll add the batch later, and then someone comes along and pulls it up, it's going to pull it up.
Very good point. Yep.
So I guess you need to have a process that says, yes, we'll batch in dev, but we'll do it at this point, and this is what the state of the update sets need to be before or after, whatever.
Yeah.
And the only downside of that I can see is you could be a developer with multiple update sets open.
Yeah.
In progress.
Yep.
And
even though if you're done, it's hard to track. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. If you've got a developer, you could have, let's say, 10 update sets open, all in progress, right?
Yep.
That you have actually done.
Yeah.
But you're waiting to match them, right? And that brings me on to my next point. I don't like that at all. I can't stand that. Are you one of these people that has multiple web browser tabs open?
No.
Right, that is one of my biggest bugbears. If I do a share screen with someone and I see them have more than 10 web browsers, I have to ask them to close them.
How they can manage it. Yeah.
I don't know, how can you do it?
I think 5
How can you go through life with that many browsers?
Yeah.
But it's the same with update sets for me. If I see I've got multiple in progress, I start to panic.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Don't like it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And it may well be that you're not then becoming agile, if you know what I mean. So if there's 10 different update sets and, it's still there after a sprint, should it still be there?
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, I guess.
It should be completed.
The answer is no.
You could rely on your runbook more than your update sets lists.
And it depends. I guess you're quite right. It depends what methodology you're using to deliver, right? Whether you're using agile, waterfall, wagile.
Yeah.
I guess you have to come up with a method that's going to fit it.
Yeah.
But again, I keep coming back to that same point. As long as it's documented and everyone's on the same page.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another consideration is that you may not have access to prod. So you may have to think about, that you only have the ability to push up into test, and some organizations will be okay with that. But then it's up to a completely different department who will then do the push to prod for you. So, whether it's going to be exported XMLs, they could miss some XMLs. So, during the night, they're going to call you and say, I'm missing all this stuff. Whereas if you're just pulling it up through update sources, it's a lot easier.
That's very true.
So that's another thing to think about.
Yeah, and that's another good point. Is if you are a customer of ServiceNow and you live and breathe this in your day job, I guess that's different than if you're a partner like you or I, where we go to work on someone else's instance, and sometimes they might already have their policies. So what you do in one project may not be the same for the next project.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So your naming convention may be different. Your method that you use to pull up, you might be working with an architect. Just fortunately for you, you are the architect, so you make the rules more often than not. But you may be working on another project, and the architect says, "No, I want you to export them, put them on a floppy disk." There's something we haven't heard for a while. Floppy disk. And post it, and we'll load it ourselves. In fact, actually, I've been on one of those projects where you do stuff by disk.
Yep. Yeah, me too. Yep.
So yeah, I think we're making some good points, and I think the salient point which keeps coming back around for me is consistency, agreement, and some kind of policy around it. Yep,
100%. I think that kind of summarises it quite well.
Yeah, I think we need to summarise it because we've
gone 38 minutes.
We don't say 38 minutes because I'm going to cut a load out. But no, this has been a good conversation, actually. And I wasn't expecting it to kind of ignite as much as it has. We're obviously quite passionate about it. We haven't even talked about things like GitHub repositories.
Oh, I know. App repo, team development. What do you put in the change when you push to prod? Lots of different things.
I know. We're going to have to come back to this. And go through it. It's obviously a hot topic that we're passionate about. Yeah, and
it applies to quite a few different people from different backgrounds as well, I think. So
yeah, and do you know what else I noticed, right, is you didn't, because I can see your hands, right? You didn't look on the web for the textbook answer. No. You didn't do your research to say, this is what ServiceNow say about update sets.
No, I didn't at all. I think, like you say, because it's something that is common for every single project that you are on. That you're going to have update sets, and you're going to go for this again and again and again. So I think you can guarantee that everyone listening to this has been burnt.
Oh God! And they're shouting and screaming, going, "No, don't batch it!
Why would you batch?
What are you doing?
Merge is safest." Yeah, yeah.
But interesting, I listened to might have been a podcast Chuck Tomasi on as a name drop, going back ages ago, and it was all death to the update sets. We don't want update sets. And this was when they brought out the fact that you could do that you could put global apps inside scope, kind of send it off to app repo stuff. Glad you thought of the word, I couldn't think. And that was God knows how long ago. So yeah, it hasn't happened, does it?
No, they predicted the same thing with me on the CMA course that I attended, and they said look, update sets will at some point go. I think they're even saying that it'll be sunsetted, or I think they'll struggle to sunset update sets, but I think they really are pushing. I think they are quite pushing into that direction.
Now let's launch our campaign to let's take our banners. That's it.
Go outside ServiceNow offices. Let's just organise a time.
Keep the update sets. No. But anyway, James, this has been really good. I hope people listening has found this really, really useful.
Yep.
If you are listening, got any thoughts, observations, anything you do, any funny stories, we like funny stories.
Yep.
Then drop us an email. Make sure you're following the podcast. And until next time, I've been Russ.
I've been James.
And this is Service Ducks.
That's all for today's podcast. Thank you for listening. And if you want to get your question answered by the Service Ducks, get in touch through Talk to the Duck at service-ducks.com, or just use one of the links below.